What a win by the Toronto Blue Jays. The comeback kids do it again, all led by a legacy performance from Alejandro Kirk.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So obviously this is a little bit of a different look. We have started the guest week. Braden will not be with us today, so I will be the main host of this episode. But I am not alone. We do have a guest coming in. But before we do get into that, just wanted to make sure that you guys were coming back, checking out the YouTube, TikTok, and just appreciate all the support, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you do get your podcasts. Just for our Twitters, if you want to follow along with us, we do have Locked On Jays, which I have obviously on the screen here. Then Braden 5 Owasso when he is normally here, Carter First 2. And you can find us at Locked On Blue Jays on TikTok, Twitter, pretty much anywhere that we are posting content and wherever you do want to find your Blue Jays content from us on Locked On Blue Jays. But for our first guest of the week, we do have one guy that is making his return to the podcast, and I'll throw it to his intro now.
Locked On Blue Jays guest host Tristan Baranowski.
Wow, my first ever intro, custom made. Thank you, Braden. I know you're probably sleeping on a boat right now. Makes me feel very welcome, and I can tell you put a lot of work into it. So, yeah, glad to be back.
I figured you would absolutely love that one. I have not told anyone that is coming on this show about their intros, kind of let you know before this. But yeah, obviously you got your first reaction to that Braden Wasco intro. Obviously, like you said, put a lot of time and effort into it. I'm absolute magician with the editing here. But I guess let's just dive right into it. What a game by the Toronto Blue Jays. An absolute roller coaster like we've kind of seen throughout this entire season. They get up early. Obviously, Yariel, Brendan Little, not great performances in that 8th inning. Give up a 4 spot, and then not a lot of faith, at least from me, going into that 9th inning. And then an unsung hero guy, an unlikely source that had that production. Jonatan Clase all of a sudden launches 100 over the fence against Ryan Helsley. Just overall, what was your initial reactions and how you feeling after that first game against the St. Louis Cardinals?
Well, it was, as a fan, it was a lot of fun to watch. I mean, you would have liked to see them get out to a bit of an earlier lead. Andre Palante isn't exactly the ace of that squad, but and then they fell behind. You again like to see Yariel maybe throw a mix a heater in instead of getting 2 breaking balls smacked around. But overall, they showed guts. Jonatan Clase, what a great at bat. Looked very sharp and looked good today. Also had a bunt single and a couple nice plays in center. And then Kirky again when it mattered most, coming through for the boys. So yeah, it was a great game to watch as a fan.
Yeah, you can't really get much better from an entertainment value. Obviously, you do not want your bullpen blowing games like that, but I think you can give them a little bit of leeway with just how overworked they have been, how much they have been pitching, and just with your assets available, and just obviously the production that they provided for this entire season. I really cannot figure out this St. Louis Cardinals team. They kind of look through the lineup, and they have some guys that are decent. I like Lars Nootbaar, Brendan Donovan looks really good. Nolan Arenado still good defensively, but again, not really a lot of upside from the bat this season. And then, like you said, you look at the pitching staff and you kind of look at the matchups that they do have for the rest of the series, and nobody's really blowing you away. You got Miles Michaelis for the next game, which obviously we'll go into in the third segment, but I'm not scared of that guy whatsoever, especially with this offense kind of firing on all cylinders, really, other than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It's been a fun team to watch over this last little bit. But one guy I wanted to start with, obviously, is the guy that kind of got us to the situation, gave you a very good start, kind of the typical Jose Berrios start that we are accustomed to seeing, and that obviously is Jose Berrios. I kind of gave you that typical start that you see from a guy like this. Didn't really miss a lot of bats, only had 5 whiffs on the day, 1 strikeout, 2 walks, but you needed innings, especially with how things have gone recently with Bowden Francis pitching, with Erik Lauer kind of splitting up that bullpen day. You get 6 2/3 from Jose Berrios. What did you see from Jose Berrios today, and just how have you felt over this last little bit of stretch that he has had, where he has been one of the best pitchers, if not the best pitcher, on the Toronto Blue Jays starting staff?
Well, and I kind of alluded to this a bit on my last appearance. I really do love a good innings eater, a guy that can go out there and give you 6+, give you 7+, a quality start, a guy that you can count on for a majority of his starts to go out there and give your bullpen a bit of a break. And even though they played an extra inning, what do we use, four guys out of that pen? So. Um, you could kind of tell when he went out there for the seventh, he kind of didn't have it. He didn't really have his best swing and miss stuff to be. He was able to generate a lot of soft contact. He was able to get some ground balls today, and only two walks as well. So that's something that you'd like to see. Um, he's a guy that you can just count on that. And you saw the graphic today. He's gonna have put up probably 32 starts again this year. Knock on wood that there's no injury trouble with him, but there never really seems to be, right? So he's a guy where even if he doesn't have his best stuff, if he can make it through the first couple innings, that he's not a guy that's going to get too crazy. You can count on him for the innings, and even if he doesn't have a swing and miss, you saw it tonight. So he battled, he got some soft contact, couple clutch double play balls, and that's all you can really ask for is 6+ from your guy.
Yeah, that's exactly what you needed, especially with all things considered going into this game. Again, knock on wood, but Jose Berrios is an Iron Man. If this guy would go down, especially with the way your starting rotation is looking right now, this starting rotation cannot afford an injury from one of your big three, whether it's Gausman, the Hound on the mound, or Jose Berrios. I'm not sure where this team does stand, unless you're really high on Spencer Turnbull, which we'll probably get into at some point in this episode. But again, not a ton of depth options at this point for the Toronto Blue Jays. Another guy, probably the man of the hour, if you're not talking about Jonatan Clase, and it's Alejandro Kirk. This guy just continues to surprise me. Again, having his best season, I think, of his career by far. I don't really think that is an understatement whatsoever. Adding 2 doubles, had a home run, almost was on cycle watch for Alejandro Kirk. Obviously, Victor Scott kind of helping him out with the Jose Canseco home run in that 8th inning. But right now, with Alejandro Kirk, whether it's Tyler Heineman, this catching position has been so good for this Toronto Blue Jays staff. And I just want to hear your thoughts on overall Alejandro Kirk this season, the kind of the catching tandem. And then after, I do have another question based off of that, kind of with a guy that was previously here, but overall just Alejandro Kirk's performance in the first game against the Cardinals series.
Well, you know what? I like Kirk. I like Kirk the guy. I like Kirk the player. After I would say the second half of 2023 and as well as last year, you were kind of worried, like, is he the long-term answer? He's shown enough growth defensively to where he's shown the front office that I am the guy going forward. You can put me behind the backstop for the next 5 years. He's another guy that doesn't really, he's an Iron Man. He'll go out there. Obviously, he'll get his catcher's day off, but you're not going to see too many IL stints. And for a bigger guy, he does seem to take very good care of his body. He does seem to be very fluid and flexible for how big he is. And you're not really going to expect a lot on the base paths, but with him, with how big of strides he's made defensively, it feels like he's gotten a little bit better every year. First, it was really his framing that took a big jump, and then it was his blocking. I feel like his arm's kind of taken a jump as well. And when you can add an OPS in the high 700s along with all that, you're going to get a 4-WAR catcher, really, which is for $10 million a year, it's a steal, right? So, or less than that, I believe. So, absolutely, this is I'm just excited to see him put it back together with the bat, where it did feel like his swing was a bit disjointed. You're getting a lot of pulled off swings, a lot of ground balls in the past. He's starting to elevate a bit more. I mean, you saw. And his play coverage is kind of back to where it used to be. I mean, you saw today, like, even if he did get a little bit of help with that home run, that was 99 right at the numbers, right? And he right at the letters, sorry, and he sent to 400 feet. So just the growth from him is, and kind of getting back to where he was in his Silver Slugger season, it's really impressive to watch, and you just got to hope that it can kind of get sustained, and it's not just a hot streak, right? So.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with Alejandro Kirk. So you kind of saw it in the first inning where you have him on the base paths. George Springer hits a double down the line. Everyone else in the league, I swear to God, scores in this play. Alejandro Kirk kind of just striding into third base. But when you're barreling balls like Alejandro Kirk is, again, all 4 of his hits today were over 95 miles an hour. You kind of talked about that 8th inning, hit the ball over 400 feet. So some very good swings from Alejandro Kirk. And you brought this up with just how he takes care of his body, how we haven't really seen, again, knock on wood, kind of talking about injuries right now, but we haven't seen an IL stint from from Alejandro Kirk. And that's kind of how I wanted to loop this in with a guy that has previously been with the Toronto Blue Jays and kind of the change that has been made going into the season. So obviously before this, you had Danny Jansen around, Alejandro Kirk, Danny Jansen, kind of doing that catching tandem, the 50-50 split. Do you think that Danny Jansen leaving and really giving Alejandro Kirk the floor, giving him that full catching role, having, again, probably assuming that he's going to start between 115, 120, maybe up to 125 games, you think that has really allowed Alejandro Kirk to kind of settle in behind the plate, realizing, hey, this is my position, this is my baseball team, and it kind of, we've seen him flourish between our eyes. Do you think that kind of has something to do with it?
Absolutely. And you know, it's all confidence with things like that, right? Like they decided to they let Jansen go. And then they, in the same offseason, they extend Kirk. So that's him. They've gotten rid of two pretty good catchers now, and they've told Kirk, all right, it's your backstop. You do what you got to do, and he's been able to come through for him this year. And I think just having that vote of confidence from the team is huge for him. And he's a guy where, at one point for a little bit when Gabby Moreno was still on the team, he was looking like, is this the third best catcher on the team, right? Danny Jansen, you always felt like if he could just get a full healthy season in, he'd be an all-star. It always seemed he'd be hot and then he'd get hurt and he'd come back and he'd struggle. Wait a month or two to get hot again, but it would be kind of too late to put together a real year of good numbers where Kirk he's been there the whole time, but it's been a lot of downs in the last couple of years. So it was a bit of a gamble from the Blue Jays, but it's definitely paying off so far.
Oh, it absolutely is. Alejandro Kirk hasn't even started his contract, like you said, 5 years, $58 million, so just over that $10 million clip. But they bought low on Alejandro Kirk, which we haven't really seen. That's one of the biggest gripes with the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. contract, is you kind of see a lot of these contracts persist. You see the Juan Soto, you see a lot of these contracts getting higher in value. You kind of put yourself in a bad spot with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So it's nice to see that this front office kind of bought in on a guy that didn't necessarily have a very good 2024 season. And he is kind of lighting the world on fire right now as we progress through the 2025 season. But I do want to ask you about the ninth inning, but I am going to take a short break. We're going to get into the back half of this game, really when the game kind of picked up with the St. Louis Cardinals scoring 4 in the 8th inning. Obviously, it's a very good at-bat by Jonatan Clase. I want to talk about Bichette and what he was kind of doing in that 9th inning. I have a question for you there. Bunch more we want to go into, still some more game stuff, and obviously a bunch from the season with Tristan on the podcast. Like to see some new and fresh perspectives. There you go. Got that one out. So we are going to take a short break and come back to you guys after this. Today's episode is sponsored by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the most reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. Start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That is SH5 for 5% off your first order, and that is at supplyhouse.com. Well, Barrel, we'll dive back into it and kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. So we'll start with the St. Louis Cardinals in that 8th inning. Obviously, you do have Brendan Little going in that inning. Lately, in the last couple of starts, from what I've been seeing with Brendan Little, is we're really starting to see the command kind of slip away from this guy. He's getting deeper into counts, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but he's having some trouble finishing off hitters. Again, seems like he's having some trouble locating in the strike zone. Obviously, gave up a couple runs in that inning. Yariel Rodriguez kind of gave up the bulk of them. But going into that Yariel Rodriguez performance as well, again, kind of a backed up slider to Ivan Herrera, not exactly the pitch that you want to see. But we'll start with Brendan Little. What are you seeing from him, and is there a cause for concern with some of the command issues that we're starting to see from this guy?
I wouldn't say there's any sort of cause for concern. They pointed on the broadcast, Caleb Joseph, that he seemed to be rushing his delivery. So it might just be something mechanical from him that's causing the command issues. Usually from what I've seen, command issues are either mechanical or they're mental. In this case, it does seem to be a bit more mechanical, which with a little bit of work should be a bit of an easier fix. Throughout the course of the year, generally guys aren't going to go through the year with a 1.2 ERA or whatever he was at a few days ago. So you'll see a couple of these from time to time just to keep his season numbers a bit honest. A bit of regression is going to happen over the course of a 162 game season. I wouldn't sound any alarms yet. His stuff is still looking good. He got a couple nice swing and misses earlier today. But like you said, the command's there, but I think it's something mechanical. I think it's something he and the pitching coaches can certainly work through.
Yeah, and he has been unbelievable this season. Did throw 24 pitches, 14 strikes, 10 balls. Again, not exactly what you want to see from Brendan Little, but overall in this season still has 30 innings pitched, 44 strikeouts. The knuckle curve is one of the best pitches in all of baseball, still a 2.10 ERA. So again, I agree with you. I don't think there is many alarm bells to sound with Brendan Little, especially with the expectation going into this season. Did anyone think Brendan Little was going to be your main lefty out of the pen? Maybe you did, but the upside was probably limited, obviously. And then this guy has been coming out in save situations in high leverage, so taking that massive step. I don't really think that you can fault Brendan Little for what he has done this season. Again, there's going to be a lot of peaks and valleys in any reliever season. That kind of takes us into another relief pitcher who has been absolutely dominant, other than really in this start, and that is Yariel Rodriguez, been one of the best relief pitchers on the Toronto Blue Jays before this kind of blow up. You could say he had 16 and 2/3 innings pitched without a run given up. That is May 4th was the last time that this guy has given up an earned run. So where are you at with Yariel Rodriguez? Is this just kind of a blow-up start? Obviously not the pitch location that you really wanted to see, but I think with Yariel Rodriguez, I'll give my take on this after, but how do you feel about Yariel Rodriguez kind of inheriting runners in that instance? Comes in, 8th inning, 2 outs, runners on base. Are you okay with throwing Yariel Rodriguez in that situation with how good he has been? Or would you like to have Yariel kind of come in, have a clean inning, and just kind of, work by himself and kind of get himself into trouble and out of trouble?
As a guy who, earlier in his career was a starter, I can kind of see, and I don't know the numbers with him and inheriting runners as far as his major league career, but in Cuba he was always a starter. Moved to I believe Japan and was a reliever. So I can understand why maybe for him mentally, just given his history, it does make more sense to give him a clean inning. I do also feel that he has earned over the last month that situation. He's a guy that's, he's really just had knockout stuff over this last month. And a guy that I do trust going forward. I think it's pretty clear now that the back end of the bullpen is where he belongs. Of course, you're paying him a bit amount of money to do so, but then again, you also have him locked up for pretty much his entire prime. What I will say is with his stuff doesn't quite play the same as a starter. Based on with his fastball shape as a starter, he was sitting 94, 95.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of great movement there to where that's really going to be effective, and that's where you would see it. So if that fastball's hittable and he's leaving that splitter up, it's very hittable. But as soon as that fastball becomes, now you're seeing 97, 98 out of the pen. And like I said before, I wish he would have used it. A bit today. That's when that splitter can really play, and he's going to be a different guy.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Yariel Rodriguez has done this season. I think you have to throw him in high leverage, especially, again, with how you've been using your bullpen. Probably not a lot of other options anyway, but Yariel Rodriguez would have been one of those best options. I just don't like throwing a slider there. Obviously, he backs it up. That's not at all where he wants a slider, but when you are playing with a 97, 98 mile-an-hour fastball, and again, you only need to get one out, I will like to see you get a little bit more aggressive and not, kind of be fancy with the slider. Just go after with what is working for you and some of your best stuff. But, okay, let's get into the Jonatan Clase at-bat. I kind of gave you a little bit of a warning, and obviously we're going to talk about this because it did tie the baseball game. But I just want to know your confidence level going into that at-bat. Jonatan Clase lays a bunt down the inning before, kind of did that Nathan Lucas impression where he hits a home run and then bunts. Jonatan Clase did the reverse. But going into this at-bat, do you think there was any chance that Jonatan Clase was even going to get on base, nonetheless launch a home run 415 feet into the seats?
I mean, hey, you never say never. Ryan Helsley's a very darn good reliever, and he's probably the last guy I would expect on this team, but to hit a home run in that spot. But I will say I do like Clase as a prospect. He's still a young guy. He's got tools for days. This is a guy that has been able to hit for power in the minors. He's a guy that I would like to see get an extended run. Of course, not kind of at the expense of winning now, because now you're seeing that this team is right in the thick of a wild card race. So, he is a guy that I'd like to give him a couple years in the organization. Not always in the bigs, because he's not going to be one of your 9 best hitters right now. But he's definitely a guy that I like going forward, to give a chance, give him a year or two more extra development, see where he goes. Did I think he did a home run today? Absolutely not, especially not an inning or two after laying a bunt down. But I mean, you can see that is a natural home run swing. He's a guy that's been able to hit, I want to say, 20 homers in the minors before, as a very young and green prospect. So he's a guy that has that in his game. He hasn't been able to barrel up the ball quite as well as you'd expect once he's getting to the higher levels, which I think that's kind of where it comes in for him. But it's nice for him to remind us all of why the Jays traded for him in the first place. He's not just a speed guy.
Yeah, and I thought he was going to carry that bat around the entirety of the bases, because he almost took it all the way to first base. Obviously, you love to see the emotion, him being fired up. Like you said, Ryan Helsley is not no slouch, so hitting a home run off of him in that instance is definitely could be a career-changing moment and a big confidence boost for a guy that hasn't necessarily been playing the best brand of baseball and up to the caliber that we know he can play. But going into, obviously, the 9th inning and then just the extra inning period as well, I don't know if you saw, after that Jonatan Clase home run, Bichette was at the plate and he had a 2-2 count. And I think he was trying to call time. And then all of a sudden just backs out of the box. Ryan Helsley throws him a slider at the bottom of the zone. What is your analysis there? Do you see him calling time? You didn't see any hand movement. Just overall, like, why is Bichette kind of backing away in a big spot in the game in a 2-2 count?
So I don't know if I'm going crazy or if I'm the only one that caught this, but I think he thought it was a pitch clock violation, and I thought it was at the time too. If you go back and look at it, the clock's at 0, and Helsley is just starting his throwing motion. I think he's seeing that clock out of the corner of his eye and caught it, because the ball is 1,000% still in Helsley's hand, and that clock is at 0. And of course, they're not really calling it unless it's egregious. I mean, we've seen it now for a couple of years. They're not going to call that stuff unless it's. But it is something where I noticed it kind of as Bichette was coming out of the box. Like, oh yeah, the clock's at 0. What if it's a pitch clock? And kind of nothing happened. I don't know. Of course, we'll see if Johnny Dogs has something to say to the media after that, or if anyone's going to ask the boys about what was going on there, but. At the time, I thought it was a pitch clock. The broadcast didn't really pick up on it, so now I'm not so sure. Maybe it was just a weird time call or a brain fart. I'm not sure, but I think at first I thought pitch clock, and now I'm just as clueless as everyone else.
Yeah, I watched it back multiple times. I didn't even think about pitch clock, so that definitely could have been what Bichette was thinking. But obviously, when you're calling for time, it's not granted. It's not an automatic time call. The umpire has to grant you that time. But usually, you see a hand signal. You see Bichette. Obviously, like, these players are going to talk to the umps. They're going to yell time. Didn't really see any mouth movement. Didn't see any hand movements whatsoever. So when I was looking at that, I was really, again, confused as well as to kind of what happened on that play. Maybe the only thing that kind of makes sense is it was a pitch clock. So you don't see, again, like, Bichette just wasn't scared about Ryan Helsley maybe hitting him there, trying to run away from the box. It wasn't Wubba pitching. So I mean,
exactly.
didn't have Daulton on the mound. Obviously, you guys will see him later on for this week. But yeah, just an interesting kind of play there. Didn't really expect that to happen. Let us know what your take is on that play. Was Bichette, was it a pitch clock? Did you think he called time? Was there something else? Did maybe you saw his grandma in the stands? I'm not sure what it was, but let us know what happened there. And the last guy I really want to get into is just Jeff Hoffman, because this guy was absolutely unbelievable today. The splitter was disgusting. With Jeff Hoffman, for me, I can tell within the first 2 pitches how his outing is going to go. And today you can see it with how the fastball is playing. Again, the movement on the splitter, just how he was using all of his pitches cohesively. Was a very good outing from Jeff Hoffman. So overall, like, what did you see from Jeff Hoffman? And are you kind of on the fence with some people on Twitter? Again, we're very actively online, so we're seeing kind of all sides of this. People are looking at the Jeff Hoffman ERA, and they're saying that he is not a good relief pitcher. He's not been good this season, even though he does have 16 saves. So overall, just give us your take and just your overall perception on how Jeff Hoffman has played, not only in this game, but for the entire season.
He seems like one of those guys where either you got it or you don't. On that particular day, we had a former closer by the name of Jordan Romano, who I felt was very similar. There are very few closers in the league that, always have it, but there's a bit of a bigger group of guys that will mostly have it on any given night. Jeff Hoffman seems to be more in a different category. Along with some of the more mercurial guys, where they either look like they are a top three closer in the game, or they look like they shouldn't be there. Things like that tend to be, I'm not sure. Sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's mental. But he did look sharp today. He had a great break on his secondaries, and I think overall you just kind of got to let him adjust. I mean, relievers year to year over year you're always going to have some sort of a fluctuation. I'm in the camp where I think, and I think I said this last time I was on as well. You don't sign a guy to be your closer, and demote him after a couple months, right? Because at the end of the day, the bigger picture is you want to be able to attract free agents in the long run. You're looking at how long did it take them to move Springer off. They moved Springer off the leadoff spot about 2 years too late, because they understood that you sign guys and you make promises to them. If you break those promises, veteran players around the league will notice that. So I think, big picture, I don't think you can demote him, especially when you know that 80% of the time you're not going to have anything to worry about with him. It's just seeing what he can do to minimize the other 20%, where he just seems to either lose his command or hang a couple pitches and it's too late.
I think that was a really good point on like you're signing a guy for a role. You're not going to demote him from that role, especially early on. This team already has a tough enough time, getting free agents, getting these big caliber players to come in for their team. So if other players from around the league start to see that, hey, like John Schneider is giving this guy a 1-2 league leash and then demoting him, either not playing as much, maybe dropping him in order, not necessarily, giving him the promise that they did, or the reason that they signed the contract through for the specific reasons why they signed that contract. With a guy like Jeff Hoffman, just like George Springer, like you said, with these veteran players, the guys that have earned their roles, you can't necessarily take away their roles just because of 1 or 2 blow-up starts. With Jeff Hoffman, you said 80% of the time. It was a couple weeks ago. This was the last time I looked at it, so obviously it's a little bit different now. But there was 22 in the third innings that Jeff Hoffman pitched that were completely scoreless innings, and he had 27 in the third innings pitched. So obviously Jeff Hoffman isn't going out there every single outing and having a blow-up start. When these closing pitchers do have these blow-up starts, their ERA is going to be the first thing that gets inflated, because they're only throwing 1 inning, usually time and time again. Jeff Hoffman, we have seen again in this game, did throw 2 innings, but a lot of the time when they're not having their best stuff, especially when you're a relief pitcher, that ERA stat can be very misleading in terms of just how successful a closing pitcher can be. But now I'm just going to take it into the question period. I got a couple of questions for you, obviously. The first one is going to be about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You can't really do a podcast on the Toronto Blue Jays without talking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Again, the $500 million man. I've been hearing that from Twitter people. I'm hearing that from my friends. You're going to hear that kind of storyline throughout this entirety of his career. So Vladimir Guerrero Jr. goes 2 for 5 in this game. Before I ask you this question, I just wanted to go over the power numbers, because that is going to be the first thing that people draw on with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So I quickly did some due diligence and looked over just a few players that have more home runs than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. this season. So that's not going to be a fun thing for Blue Jays fans to hear, but there are some interesting names on this list. Just for reference, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. does have 8 home runs. Miguel Vargas is a guy that has more home runs than Vladdy. He has 9. Rowdy Tellez has more home runs. He has 9. Gavin Sheets, who we did see launch off the Toronto Blue Jays, he has 11. I think the worst one that I found is Joe Adell has 12 home runs. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has 8. So overall, how are you seeing Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? What are you thinking about his production? Is it worth the $500 million contract? And just how worried are you about this production as we progress throughout the season?
I don't think worried is. I don't think a lot could happen this year that would truly worry me with Vlad. I mean, again, he's a guy where you see it fluctuate year to year with him. The power numbers, especially. The hit tool is always going to be somewhat present with him. Like, you really can't count on him to hit below like 270. And he'll always walk at a decent enough clip to where he's not going to be an absolute black hole offensively. It doesn't matter how bad he's struggling. So the power numbers are really the only thing you have to worry about with him. I mean, yeah, of course you'd like to see more. I mean, if Vlad has 15 home runs instead of 8, where are the Blue Jays in the standings? I mean, a lot of times it depends on when he hits them. He could have the double amount of home runs, and they could be right where they are. But it's something to where he's still hitting the ball hard. It's very similar to his 2023, where he was hitting the ball really hard. He was getting unlucky on a lot of line drives, and he was also killing a lot of worms and hitting the ball straight down at 115 miles an hour or whatever. So um it often comes back to simple adjustments, and he is a guy who he's a guy that overthinks in the box, and think these things sort of snowball for him. I'm sure having to live up to $500 million, as much as it's nice to get paid, it can't be super easy. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't really, if you don't see the power stroke come back in a major way. I mean, I think last episode I said I'd be shocked if he hit less than 30, and really by this point I'm not really sure if I would be. But with Vlad, that a power surge is just like a little tinker in his swing away. He's a guy that can make one small change and all of a sudden unlock just an absolute terror of a run. And he's a guy that, even if the power numbers, quote unquote, still aren't there, he's gonna hit a double every couple games. He's gonna take his walks. So he's not gonna be an absolute black hole out there no matter what. Of course, you're making $35 million as a first baseman. You got to hit home runs. It is a non-negotiable, and maybe I am a little bit too much of a nice guy, but um, I'm willing to give him a year. The contract hasn't kicked in yet. This seems to be kind of a transitional year, and it seems to be this year kind of seems to be from the front office. If we make the wild card, great, and if not, we can retool over the next couple of years with all this free money we're about to have. So, um, you know, and you just know that if he picks us up with the way that the bottom of the order is going, then we should be in for one hell of a summer.
Well, and that's the thing. The bottom of the order is one of the best in all of baseball, 5-9 in batting average. They were number one going into this game. I'm sure they are probably number one after this game with the performances that they did have. With Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you brought up the small changes. Last year, the small change was cutting his hair. As soon as he cut his hair, he started going off, hit home runs, hit over like 330 for the rest of the season. So with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., it's not like he's having the Anthony Santander season where he's hitting 580. The at-bats look absolutely horrific. Again, when you're getting $500 million, that's going to loom over his head no matter what, unless he has 45 home runs, hitting 300, 100 RBIs. If the numbers aren't like that, there's always going to be the naysayers and people saying, oh, like, why'd they pay him this? Is it overpay this, overpay that? At this point, he's on the team. Like, you're not going to get that $500 million back. It's not our money. So, again, you do want more power. But with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I'm not going to be a guy that's going to write a guy with just that sort of talent level on this baseball team off just throughout the first 2 months of the season. I'm expecting a huge power surge at some point from Vladimir Guerrero Jr., although I don't know if he's going to get to that 30 home run mark. He does have a lot of work to do, obviously, but there is still a lot of season ahead of us. And the last question I do have for you, one that kind of has been the talk of Blue Jays media, couldn't go through this podcast without kind of talking about this guy either, and is the Bowden Francis show and effect on things right now. So obviously you have your three pitchers, and then you got Bowden Francis, you have Erik Lauer, now Spencer Turnbull will be thrown into the mix. So overall, like, what do the Toronto Blue Jays do with these final two rotation spots? Obviously, the top three are set. Max Scherzer is set to make a rehab start on Friday. We'll probably have to make one more rehab start against Max Scherzer. So with all things considered, you have Bowden Francis. You have, again, internal fixes to this rotation. Maybe it's outside the rotation. What do you do if you're the manager, if you're John Schneider, if you're Ross Atkins? What are you doing with these rotation spots, and who are you throwing in each instance?
Well, I don't. I'm ready to give up on Brown Francis, at least for the time being. Regression is a cruel son of a Jim. When he's a guy who, as great his numbers were last year, he's a guy that didn't miss a lot of bats. And when you usually have great numbers but don't miss a lot of bats, the next year you tend to have very awful numbers and still not miss a lot of bats. So he's a guy where he was a bit of a popular regression candidate, and it seems to be valid at this point. I don't know if he's a guy that you can really trust to go out there and even give you, say, 5 innings of 3-run ball at this point, right? Erik Lauer really that much better? No, but that's kind of just where we are. You're seeing that there was a 2 or 3 year period where the Blue Jays didn't have any real gains in the farm system at all, and where other teams might be able to pull down to their AAA club and bring up a 23, 24-year-old guy who while he might be a fringe major leaguer, at least he has some promise. He has options. The Blue Jays are they had to sign vets, right? Like Eric Lauer is in his 30s, and Spencer Turnbull hasn't pitched in I want to say half, like I think we're coming up on a full year in the
Pretty much,
majors.
yeah.
Yeah, and he had, I want to say, a 9 ERA in AAA. So
Yeah, it has not been great. I think it's like an 8, but still, like it doesn't really matter. We're kind of, splitting hairs with an 8 or 9 ERA at this point.
so it's not looking pretty right now for the boys. I mean, and then also, like, can you count on even like 40 innings from Max Scherzer this year? I mean, he looked great when he was pitching. Um, but he's a guy where father time seems to be catching up with him. The small things like finger issues are knocking him out for months on end. He already picked up another ailment, and so is it just you have to go for someone? I feel like you have to go for someone at the deadline, as long as they're still in a wild card spot or close to it. I mean, if they tank out, then it's a whole different scenario. But I feel like is buying low on Zach Gallen an option? I know is buying low on like a Sandy Alcantara an option? Is just getting one of those guys in there for maybe like a couple of mid-ranked prospects, seeing what they can do with a new pitching coach. I know we're getting Alek Manoah back at some point, but he's just big of a question mark as the rest of those guys. So if this team is serious about giving them a chance to win, you can't do it with a 3-man rotation. They do have 3 major league level starters at this point.
Yeah, it's a tough scenario because there are a bunch of fixes, but which fix is the right one? And you don't want to obviously break the bank for a 4th or 5th starter down the stretch. Can you buy low on Zach Gallen? Again, are the D-backs even going to sell at this point? Again, they're not looking great right now, but that's another issue when you're looking at kind of this trade deadline, is that there are a ton of teams in the mix right now. There's only a select few teams right now that are for sure sellers. Like you have the Colorado Rockies that are one of the worst teams I've ever seen, the Athletics, the White Sox, like the Pirates, maybe the Marlins as well. So there are a few teams obviously out of the race right now, but even like when you look at a team like the Los Angeles Angels, for example, they're 4.5 games back of a wild card. Obviously, down the stretch, this will get probably worse. I'm not very high on the Angels. That's why I kind of pulled them out of thin air right there. But with this trade deadline, again, there's going to be a lot of other teams that are also looking for pitching as well. So there's going to be a market that the Toronto Blue Jays do have to compete with. It's just going to be up to the fact that how much are they willing to give up with, and what caliber of starting pitcher are they going to go for? Are they going to go for kind of a middle rotation guy? Or are they going to go for a guy that can just, be a 5th starter? We'll have to see kind of how the cards unfold and obviously where the Toronto Blue Jays are in the standings. But we still do have a game to preview. Obviously, the baseball does not end. The Toronto Blue Jays play their second game against the St. Louis Cardinals. We're going to get into that after this short break. Today's episode is sponsored by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. I always talk about Braden's example on this, but maybe she could use a vacation example, because this guy goes on a million vacations every single year. Clearly, he's got the money for it. Maybe he's got to start budgeting with Monarch Money. But realistically, I've always brought up this example with moving out to the city. Obviously, there's so much food at my disposal, whether it's fast food, Uber Eats, DoorDash, so many convenient choices to get obviously meals with, but obviously it adds up pretty quickly. So I got Monarch Money, realized, holy crap, I'm spending a ton of money on fast food. That is not going to play over the long run. So when I realized how much I was spending, Monarch Money obviously helped me reel it back and put money to things that, again, I can put it in investments, or even just save my money for other things as well. Maybe take one of those vacations that Braden has been going on. But you can take control of your finances with Monarch Money today and use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. So Barrow, obviously, like I said, the baseball does not end. The Toronto Blue Jays looking for a 5th straight series win against the St. Louis Cardinals. They'll have Chris Bassitt on the mound versus Miles Mikolas. What are you looking for, obviously, in this second game, and just how optimistic are you in this second game of the series, and hopefully for another Toronto Blue Jays series win?
Well, I'm quite optimistic, mostly because Miles Michaelis throws BP. But then again, Andre Palate also throws BP, and they only got a couple runs off him. So, you never really know in baseball. But I'm always just kind of a guy that looks at the pitching matchups and goes from there. Um, I really do think that this line will be able to put something together tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to watching it. So, I predict a 6-3 Blue Jays win.
Oh, I like that. I was going to go similar. I was going to go 5-3. I agree. Michaelis is an absolute bum, but we've seen again what bums can do against the Toronto Blue Jays. I swear they're almost better against good pitching than they are against like the bums that come around. And Patrick Corbin, I know he's had a good season, but if he came around to the Toronto Blue Jays, he might go 7 scoreless. So a good thing we did avoid him when we did play the Texas Rangers. Had Jacob DeGrom instead, that bum. But I think this is a game that you got to take advantage of, obviously. Again, when you have Spencer Turnbull, probably Erik Lauer, some sort of combination in that third game, it's kind of the same idea that I had going into that Twin series where you had two starters that you love to see, obviously on the mound. Again, Erik Lauer, a little bit of a different scenario there at that point because now with Spencer Turnbull, I'm really like, I don't know what Spencer Turnbull is going to do whatsoever. I was much more confident in guys like Braden Fisher, Paxton Schultz, even though they haven't really proved it at the major league level, but they have been good this year with Spencer Turnbull's 8 ERA in AAA. Not as confident in that outing as I was with the Erik Lauer show in the third game of the Minnesota Twins series. So I think if you're going to win a series, you got to take advantage of Michaelis here in this game. And hopefully the Toronto Blue Jays can continue with their production, whether it's from the bottom of the order, the middle of the order, Alejandro Kirk, Springer, Addison Barger just continuing to have good at-bats. And I want to see a Vladdy home run. We did that little, segment where just everyone, I could have went on longer and longer and longer, but it would have made us just hurt in the heart so much more. We need some Vladdy power, and hopefully that does come against Michaelis. But Barrow, I just want to say thank you for coming on. Appreciate it, obviously, with kind of the starting the guest week with Braden on vacation. Would have been a lot harder to obviously just, talk for 35, 40 minutes by myself. So I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that you want to plug, maybe a Twitter, Instagram handle that you want the people to know of?
No. I like to stay anonymous, but thank you for listening. Glad to hit lead off for you guys on guest week here, and shout out Denzel Clark, Canadian boy, robbed another home run. What's up?
You absolutely love to see it. Just wanted to say thank you guys for watching. The likes, comments, support, everything recently has been much appreciated. But with all the new people coming in, we have realized that about 77% of you guys are not subscribed. So if you are tuning in, coming back to the episodes, watching the shorts, the podcast, obviously if we go live, we are planning to do a live stream upcoming shortly here. So if we do end up doing that, you guys will have obviously the first access of it if you are subscribed, and hit the bell for the post notifications. We will probably preview if we are going live, but again, sometimes we might pop up randomly and just go live because we feel like it. Maybe a Friday beer stream, maybe just a random Wednesday series against the Chicago Cubs. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but we will be coming to you with all sorts of content. One more time, just wanted to say thank you guys for watching, and we will talk to you guys again tomorrow.
You guys better subscribe or else we'll find you.